Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. Our topic is all about governing artificial intelligence with a focus on working with data and content that's in Microsoft 365. We have a few topics that we'll go through today. We'll start with looking at across the AI landscape, just give a quick overview there, and talk a little bit about risks that organizations face with this new technology. And then we'll get into the sort of main part of this webinar, which is all about implementing governance and specifically also with a focus on designing SharePoint and SharePoint content for artificial intelligence. Jeff has some examples and live demos, so we'll get to see some of this in action as well. And my name is Jazz, by the way, and so I'll also be looking at the Q&A section. So just a couple of notes of housekeeping. Take a moment, find that Q&A section. We hope you ask questions. You can leave comments throughout our talk, and we should have time at the end to address some of those questions. We also are recording this session, and we'll share that recording as well as the slides in a couple of days. So watch your email for that. And we do have captions as well, and they're available under that More menu. So just a quick reminder of who we are. We're Gravity Union, that's where we work, and we focus on compliance and records management solutions and helping organizations along with their digital transformation. We are starting to work more with our clients on AI solutions. We are partnered with Microsoft as well. We have a few other partners as well to kind of round out our solutions. We're partnered with Collabware as well as Data Sentinel and ShareGate for migration. We are based in Vancouver. That's where our main office is, but we do work with clients across North America, and we have people based across Canada as well. And now I will pass it over to Jeff, who's our senior consultant, and we'll talk about governing AI.
Awesome. Thank you, Jazz. Yeah, just quickly about me. I am Jeff Dunbar, so I am a senior digital transformation consultant here at Gravity Union. I've been working in the SharePoint space for the last 5.5 or 6 years, really focused in on SharePoint, Microsoft 365. I do have a dual background in IT and business, so before I came into the SharePoint space, I was doing web programming. Before I took a little bit of a break to try my luck as a semi-professional poker player, we'll call it. And after kind of that whole scene died down, I made my way back to school where I completed a Bachelor of Business Administration. So really focused in on, honing your processes, strategy, all that kind of stuff with that Microsoft 365 and SharePoint in mind. So I do a little bit of everything in this platform. So Microsoft 365 overall, SharePoint, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Teams, records management, and now, really starting to dive into the AI space over the last couple of years here. So I am certified with several Microsoft certifications, as well as some Collabware certifications on that records management side as well. So let's dive in. So we're here to talk about artificial intelligence. So we're just going to quickly look at kind of where we're at today, and why is this such a big topic and such a big concern as well for organizations today. So really, we were in this period of development that was really a mobile first and cloud first strategy over the last few years. Smartphones have really changed the way that we interact with applications, games, websites, all that kind of stuff, right? So everything's been getting developed for that mobile platform, right? You probably all have a smartphone at this point. You're probably using it for your business applications, day-to-day work, checking in, writing emails, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where we're coming from. This cloud first approach has been around for a little while, but with COVID, we've obviously accelerated this rapidly. Legislation has changed, rules have changed around things, and everything is becoming, that cloud first design. So with all of that in mind, we are now moving into more of this AI first approach that we're starting to see. So AI is not something that's becoming a side thought, and maybe a couple organizations are doing it. This is something that's becoming front and center for the way that we develop applications, develop our solutions, and really moving forward, everything is going to start to incorporate AI into it, which is why it becomes really important, that we are focusing now on what this means to us, what this means to our organization, and how we can leverage, govern, and identify, risks and opportunities within AI today. As we said, AI isn't new, right? AI has been around for a long time. You've been using it, right? You probably have aspects of smart homes. Obviously we're all familiar with smart cars these days. You have mobile phone assistants like Siri, Google, Alexa. You've probably used a number of chatbots on websites as you're interacting, with some of the retailers and things like that. Even Microsoft Search, right? These are all forms of AI. And if you are in SharePoint and Microsoft 365, right, search is AI driven. There are algorithms where you are getting, your most worked on recent content, places you frequent most, people you work with the most, right? All of this is AI driven. If you've done any OCR on a document, as a lot of us have, right, you've used AI at your organization. Even things as simple as grammar and spelling checks in Word, right? This is a form of AI, using some of these, models and data in order to go out and make sure that, hey, your spelling and your grammar is accurate. And, you've probably been using that to help over the years simplify, your work, be more efficient and effective in when you're writing. So really, there are different types of AI, right? We've gone from, machine learning, which is training a computer system to recognize those patterns and data. So things like intelligent document processing that we're going to talk about to extract information. Deep learning, so looking at massive amounts of data, and learns by spotting those patterns, right? So this kind of technology we're using self-driving cars and things like that. Into what we're really seeing these days, which is that natural language processing. So really, right, computers being able to understand and interpret that human language, right? So when we're looking at virtual assistants, chatbots, translation software, right, that's what we're using. That natural language processing is what we want to be able to use and speak with that AI and have it understand not just what we're saying, but the context of what we're saying as well. And into what we're probably all talking about these days, which is that generative AI, right? So we're actually generating content, we're creating new written, visual, auditory content, by the way of existing data or inputs from us now. And of course, a lot of you probably hear because you're familiar with things like ChatGPT from OpenAI. So that's generative AI. In fact, the G actually stands for generative, P being pre-trained and T for transformative. And now likely you've all started to hear about Copilot as well, which is, leveraging this technology from OpenAI and expanding upon it these days. So really, Gen AI and NLP is, what's really driving a lot of our change, a lot of our innovation here, and also a lot of our concerns and risks that we do have, as well, of course, as opportunities. So why now, right? So that innovation and advancement has recently accelerated, right? The amount of growth just in those Copilot, right? Microsoft acquired, that open API not very long ago. They've probably only been, working on this since acquiring it for, 6 months to a year kind of thing. And, we're already seeing massive changes, right? So this is being accelerated at a rapid pace, and it's going to continue to grow and accelerate. Also, that generative AI and NLP are changing how we interact, not with just AI, but with our information in general, right? So this is one of the reasons why we're now seeing such a big concern, whereas some of the older AI tech, right, was less risk, less of a concern to us. It's also become more accessible for people out there to, just access some of this on the internet, Microsoft, Google, OpenAPI, Facebook, right? They're making it much easier for us to access large language models that are, already pre-trained for us and start to leverage this technology, either by just using what they have or connecting into, their open APIs and building that into our own tech. So of course, with this type of technology comes a lot of new risks, but also a lot of new opportunities for us as, a business and organization that we can take, advantage of and should take advantage of. So really, you kind of have two choices, right? You can adapt and adopt to this new AI world that we're going to be living in, or you can attempt to prevent the use of AI in your organization, which we know can be a struggle in itself. So, right, we do have a lot of benefits, right? So we can boost productivity and creativity, right? So if you've used, ChatGPT or any of these generative AI, it can quickly summarize content, give you a recipe for dinner, right? If it's 5 o'clock and you don't know what to cook with the chicken you took out at lunchtime, boom, you can get a recipe just like that. You can throw information in there, you can ask for information, you can ask it to write you an email based off of certain information, right? So really you can boost some of that productivity and get some of those, more mundane tasks done very quickly. We can also increase efficiency and cost saving through, better decision making and forecasting, reduced human error. There's a great example out there of a hospital that is using the technology to help them predict how much staff they need on any given day in their emergency room. So rather than trying to guess at how much is there, or have someone go through, okay, well, what did we need last month and the month before and all of that? They're using AI, based off all the factors that they already know that are being input into there to give them, that output. Okay, great. So we need 14 doctors today, or we need 10 doctors today, right? They can quickly make those decisions and be more accurate than if a human is doing that, which leads to better service. And also people moving faster through that emergency room and getting the treatment that they need. So great way, to increase your efficiencies and your cost savings where you're not overstaffing or understaffing. We can reduce simple administrative burdens, right? So, hey, someone writing up meeting minutes after a meeting. Well, maybe, right, we can use Copilot or generative AI in order to make that, make those meeting notes for us or generate that summary of that meeting, right? Maybe we can reduce some of that manual data entry because we're now using AI to pull that information out. And you can also improve communication between organizations and their customers or constituents, right? So things like chatbots, generative AI, right? We can quickly improve the communications between the organization and those specific customers, right? So maybe we're getting faster response times to emails. Maybe we're able to provide more accurate information quicker, right? Keep people happier. Maybe we're able to quicker triage, using something like sentiment analysis, the angry emails versus the, happy emails. And we can respond to those angry ones or those, less positive ones a lot quicker. So lots of benefits that are there from this technology. Is just how do you leverage it in the best way and reduce your risks as well. So onto our risks, right? So with new technology always comes new risks. We saw a lot of risks, that people were worried about with that cloud movement, that mobile movement, right? All of those risks that were brought up and have since, kind of been, okay, well, we understand those risks. We understand how we can best mitigate those risks, and there's strong security implementation around, cloud first platforms and all that kind of stuff. As long as you're doing the due diligence and buying through, the right companies or implementing in the right way. AI is no different. Right, there are some top risks that have been identified out there, right? So one of them that you've probably heard is, concern of job loss, right? So people are often fearful of what AI will mean for their future in your organization. And we're going to talk about why this becomes important later for you. Will AI make my job obsolete? Hopefully not, right? It always depends on how you're leveraging that AI. So as an organization, you're going to want to be able to help ease some of these fears. And that starts with you understanding this technology and putting in governance in place and information in place around how you operate your business. I have a friend who's a graphic and brand designer, right? And, we hear a lot of concerns about, okay, well, things like DALL-E are, creating graphics and images for people. What do you need somebody to do that for? Well, she's actually gone kind of the opposite way, and she's leveraging AIs to help her do her day-to-day work in that design, right? So she'll do things like, um, find all of the competitors and their logos, right? So that she can compare what she's designing and make sure it's not similar to one of the competitors where people are going to get confused between those brands, right? So she's leveraging AI to take some of that burden off of her, and then she can design a better product, a more unique product for her clients, right? So while some people are worrying, other people are starting to leverage this technology to improve their job in the same space where, a group of people are worried that they're going to lose their jobs. So as an organization, it becomes part of your job to help ease these fears of your employees. Um, Data privacy and security, of course, are a big risk. So, we're often concerned, will AI expose our confidential content to the world? Both externally and internally with our organization, right? So, hey, if I'm leveraging AI, am I going to go and find, Jazz's information about her payroll and her salary and things like that, right? By simply asking AI, right? Those are concerns that people often have. Hey, um, there may be legal implications and risks to you of using some of this AI technology, right? So if your information is being inputted into a generative AI system, where is your content going, right? So who controls the technology? What are their policies and procedures around that? So just like all the tech that we do use, right? We need to understand this. We need to make sure that we're paying attention to what our employees are using, what technology we're allowing them to leverage and use, and what we're providing for them, right? Just like, if you are a, government organization and your data can't go out of Canada or can't go out of, whatever country you're located in, you need to make sure that you're using systems and applications that will, adhere to those policies that you need. This is no different, right? There's different generative AI coming from different organizations and different companies. And if you don't know what you're using and where you're using it, right, you may hit these risks. Making decisions based on inaccurate or biased information, right? So this is obviously a concern as generative AI can go out and find information and summarize that information, right? So are your employees actually making incorrect business decision or responses based on inaccurate or biased information? Right? And not all large language models are trained the same, and they may be biased based off of, the inputs that they are getting and things like that. They may be inaccurate, right? If they are, have hard cutoff date from information 2 years ago, you might be missing 2 years of innovation, of, updates, of changes and things like that that's not getting included in there. So right? Large language models may not be up to date. They could be inaccurate or they could be biased information depending on how and what they have been trained on. This includes your external data. Or this includes external data and your internal business data, right? So we're going to talk a bit about how to design SharePoint around AI. But if your internal data is out of date, right, you might be getting responses or generative AI responses that are out of date as well. So really this comes to our content management validation, right? What are your processes and policies that you need in place as an organization to ensure, right, that there's accurate content that is being used? Because, generative AI can really help you out day to day. But if you are not, putting in processes and procedures and policies in place to ensure that that content is accurate, you're going to, potentially open yourself up to some risks, bad information getting out, or bad decisions being made off of that information you're getting. So we might be concerned about employee misuse or unethical use, right? So, are employees just using AI to complete their work or their job, and then they're relaxing at home because they're work from home and nobody's keeping an eye on them? Right, if that is the case, right, it might be a big concern for us. Are we using AI responsibly, or are we simply having employees, misuse that AI tech that we're providing them? So, sensitive data may be used as an input to third-party Gen AI tools, which might breach your privacy, right? So are we using, the information or the technology accurately, or employees, skipping that process or putting, personally identifiable information into, a open AI, and maybe that's getting out there, breaching your privacy policies. So we'll talk about what you need to have in place to help alleviate some of that employee misuse as well. Because we want our employees to be more productive. We want them to get the benefits of AI, but we want them to do it responsibly. We want them to do it ethically. We want them to, use it for its intended purpose, not to, get around doing their work or things like that. Lastly, I have copyright or intellectual property risks as one of the top risks that people are worried about. So, content in these LLMs is often trained from other content out there, information, right? And maybe this belongs to somebody else, right? So, if we're taking images from DALL-E, it's taking inspiration potentially from other images out there and other artists out there, right? So what are the copyright issues maybe with using and leveraging some of that information? How can we be sure that we aren't stealing someone else's intellectual property when using Gen AI, right? And again, it's going to come down to a bit of what you know about that technology and what technology you are using, right? Microsoft has come out and said they will legally fight for you, right? So if you get in trouble for using Gen AI and, it's a copyright infringement or something like that, they ultimately said that they will back you up and they will fight for you, right? So it depends, again, where is this, generative AI coming from? What's their policies? How are they using it responsibly to ensure that you're not, or that these models are not infringing on other people's, intellectual property as well. Ultimately, right, if you are here to wonder if can you prevent AI at your organization, I would say buckle up, because you're going to have a heck of a fight in front of you. We all know about shadow IT, and how difficult it can be to keep a hold of things, right? When we weren't going to the cloud, people would open up their own personal OneDrives or Box or things like that and move content in, right? If you say, well, we have a no AI policy, right? Inevitably, right, there are going to be people that will go out there, find programs that will do this, things like that, right? So really, if you're ignoring AI or reacting really slowly, right, it is going to open you up to more risk. It is going to open you up to your employees of your organization going outside the organization in order to, leverage that technology that they know can help them and make their lives easier, right? So generally, we would say it's better to understand the technology and proactively get ahead of it. It's going to help you reduce any risks, or at least prepare you to better handle, manage and mitigate the risks that are coming up. Implementing processes, procedure, and technology that you've conducted proper assessments on is going to be critical, right? Again, we don't want to just go leverage any open AI that's out there, right? Any generative AI, any AI tech, any AI applications that are available to us. We want to ensure that we've done our proper assessments, just like with any other technology as we go through. And then ultimately, right, govern AI across your entire organization. And that's what we're going to get into talking about now. So what do you need in place to govern AI and gain the most out of the technology? Well, really, right, where do we begin? Well, you need to start building AI into your organizational strategies. And I'm not saying that you need, a roadmap of how everything is going to have AI and stuff like that, but you need to start understanding and building that in so that your employees understand, things like, where is the organization headed? Is the organization looking into using AI? What are our policies around AI? All that kind of stuff. So you need to start building this into your strategy, into your business strategy, your technology strategy, change management, organizational culture, all of that. You probably need to start looking at roles and responsibilities, right? So You might need some new roles. You might need to define responsibilities around AI. And definitely you're going to need to implement some policies, right, and procedures. If you don't have anything around AI today, we would suggest you get started and you start talking about AI and understanding, right, what are your organizational policies, what technology is out there. And then ultimately, right, end of day, we always have that education and training of staff, right? So we want to ease some of those fears that they do have. So let's educate them on, AI technology. Let's educate them on the risks, all that kind of stuff. So Microsoft kind of has these 5 stages of growth for organizations that they talk about. A lot of us hopefully are at stage 1 right now, right? So we're starting to explore AI. We want to know what it's about. Maybe we're experimenting with it a little bit as we move through our organization into, that planning phase. So now, right, we're talking about, okay, well, hey, we like AI, or maybe you don't like AI, but we need to start plan for AI, right? If 90% of applications out there that are being developed now are going to have some sort of AI incorporated into it, right? You're going to need to have some sort of strategy around AI. So, your planning phase, you need to assess the technology, define and plan your AI strategy as an organization. Then you're going to move into step 3 or stage 3, which is kind of formalizing, socializing, and executing on that strategy. And, it's likely a long-term strategy, right? Maybe you're going to start leveraging some very simple AI or put in some policies and things in place around AI at your organization. But you're going to start executing on that strategy. You're going to start all this development process. And then eventually, right, you want to be in stage 4 and stage 5, where you're starting to deliver value through AI, right? And this can be existing AI tech. You don't necessarily need to go out and build your own application, but maybe it's just leveraging, the Microsoft 365 AI, or, things like DALL-E or OpenAI that are out there, right? And leveraging what's already there. And you want to eventually, right, be realizing consistent value across your organization from this AI technology. You want to be able to measure that and report on, what value is actually coming through. So again, right, it is unlikely that you are just going to say, well, no, we don't allow AI and block AI across your organization, right? People are very familiar with ChatGPT is, they're very familiar with what this technology can do, right? And there's a good chance that people are already leveraging it within your organization, whether you know it or not. And hopefully they're leveraging it in, a proper way. But if not, right, you want to get ahead of that and you want to start to educate and train them on those risks, as well as the opportunities that are there. So build that AI into your organizational strategies, understand and define how AI will play a role in your organization and how you can measure that value of AI. Some of it will be very easy to measure, some of it will be a little more difficult. And then understand and define, right, how AI will play into your technology scenarios and start to plan for build versus buy scenarios. So if you are keen and you want to leverage AI, are you going to build your own solutions? And maybe you're leveraging some of the existing, open AI solutions and things like that, because, obviously you're not going to be out there and able to get as much data and information into your models as they have. But maybe you're just buying too, right? So maybe you're buying Copilot, maybe you're buying, part of the Microsoft Premium Suite, formerly Microsoft Syntex, or sorry, SharePoint Premium Suite, formerly Microsoft Syntex. So a key in all of this, right, is going to be your change management, as it is with anything, right? So essentially, everyone needs to start looking at creating a culture of ethical and responsible AI use. If you can't stop AI, if you're unable to block it, which likely you're going to be, then you need to start building that culture around to how to responsibly, ethically use AI. And part of that comes, right, typical from a top-down leadership support of AI technology. So we don't want to come out necessarily and say, we don't like AI, we're not going to use AI, we ban all AI, right? We want to show leadership support for that AI tech and start educating, that staff on how they can leverage AI that is available to them, or at least what is coming down the road for AI in our strategies and when they can potentially leverage them and how, it's going to help them increase their productivity rather than replace them, right? So if we don't have support for AI and we say AI is bad, we're going to ban AI, right? Our staff might be more fearful that one day, right, it is going to replace them. So change management is always key. And then we can train the staff of all levels, encourage them to learn about AI, improve their skill sets, upskill, and gain more knowledge in this space as well. Because like I say, you can take any kind of typical job and have a way to potentially use AI to replace it, but you can also add in a way to have AI help them become more productive while still maintaining, their core job. It all just depends on how you look at AI, how you're responsibly using AI, and what purpose you're designing that AI for. And there will definitely be some companies, organizations, people out there that design with the intention of replacing jobs. Hopefully you're not one of those organizations and you want to use AI to enhance your employees' work, enhance their skill set, make them more productive and efficient, and just, make their quality of life a little bit better in their day-to-day jobs. So when we're talking about roles and responsibilities, right, you will need to implement process controls and accountability structures. You may be able to leverage some of the stuff that you already have in place for application technologies, etc. But ultimately, you need to figure out who is responsible for AI at your organization. And that might start out in IT. That might be, your director of technology, whoever it might be at this point. But at some point, you may need to have, a person dedicated to that AI technology. It's moving quickly. Can you expect your existing team to stay on top of all these developments, all these risks, etc.? Right? As we're talking about risks, do you have a risk officer right now? Do you need one, right? And if you do have one, do they currently understand AI? If not, how are they going to understand the risks around that AI, right? So again, you may need to find some experts with AI knowledge, and you might not need to do that today, but you might need to start planning for that in the future. If you're going to build your own AI solutions, right, you may need to bring in new developers. If you're going to have people, right, drive that business strategy, et cetera, right, they need to understand that AI, that technology, those risks, those opportunities, how to measure AI, how to use it responsibly, ethically, all that kind of stuff. So you may need to add some new roles into your organization as we progress down this AI journey as well. So policies and procedures is going to be a big one, right? So you do need your AI usage policy if you don't have one, right? And you need to start communicating this to your employees, because if you are not, they may very well be using technology that they shouldn't be. They may be putting information into that technology, not understanding it, that they shouldn't. So if you're not having these policies, if you don't have these communications, right, you do need to start doing that. You need to start defining things like what technologies and applications are acceptable to use. Maybe it's fine to use ChatGPT if they know what information they're putting in, right? So you could totally use ChatGPT to help you generate some information, do some research, all that kind of stuff with no risk to your organization necessarily, as long as they validate that information, which we're going to get into. Where maybe, right, we want to do more business specific, business related stuff, right? So maybe we're looking at something like Copilot or an internal application that we've built, right? So if we're leveraging Copilot in the Microsoft platform or building our own solutions on that Azure OpenAI technology, right? These can operate within the security and privacy boundaries of your Microsoft 365 tenant. They can use your existing security, data loss prevention policies, sensitivity labels, and all that stuff that's built into the platform. And it can automatically be applied, as we're going through this Gen AI. So, depending on what information is going in, what you're using, right, understanding which technology you're using and identifying what's acceptable to put into these different technologies for your employees is critical right, to ensuring that your risk is minimized. If you're using Copilot, it's going to stay, your data is going to stay within your Microsoft 365 tenant. Microsoft does not have access to that. They do not save, your information that you're putting into Copilot, and they do not use your content to train the large language models. Whereas if you're using that free ChatGPT service and just entering it in as a regular person, they potentially could use your information to help validate and train models further. So always be careful about what you're using. If you're using some of the more paid services, the ChatGPT's open APIs, don't use your information to train. But again, right, it's knowing that technology, it's understanding that technology, is understanding the different applications and companies and what their policies and procedures are, and making that clear to your users, right? So also, you want to make sure. I still here? Okay, cool. My screen just changed on me for a second. I thought I was gone, but I'm still here. So you also want to ensure that your procedures must be followed after using Gen AI, right? So, hey, we need to validate that information, check for inaccurate, biased, and outdated information, right? And your employees need to be aware of this kind of stuff, right? So we never want to just use Gen AI, copy paste it into an email and say, hey, we're good, right? It did all my work for me, right? There can be inaccurate information. There can be biases. The information might be outdated, right? It might have returned a response that isn't actually, what you want. So we need to make sure that we are validating content. We need to make sure that it's clear to staff that yes, if we're allowing them to use these technologies, that yes, you can use it, but you need to do your due diligence still on that content. And that needs to be built into those usage policies and procedures that you do have. And it might be specific for solutions you're building, or it might be more generic for the whole organization, but it needs to be there and it needs to be understood. Which brings us to kind of one of the most important pieces, right? All of this is great, but if you're not communicating to your staff, if you're not educating them on these risks, on these implications of misusing the technology, if you're not training them, they're not going to follow, what's there. They're not going to understand, that, hey, I just put some business information into ChatGPT and now maybe I've exposed and breached an NDA or contract or things like that, right? You need to make sure that all levels of staff understand what it is, what those risks are, what those opportunities are, and all of that needs to be educated, and you should start doing that as soon as possible in order to get ahead of that before you are opening yourself up to risks by kind of ignoring or not talking about this technology with your organization. So ultimately, right, you need to, whether you're using AI today, planning to use AI, hoping to not use AI, you still need to start supporting AI across your business from that business strategy, technology strategy, organizational culture, and ultimately designing an AI governance model. So maybe you don't want to go out and buy and leverage all this Gen AI today, but you need to start making that clear. You need to start building that into your strategies, into the culture of your organization, what the risks are, what the opportunities are, and what your plans are for AI. Very important that everybody at your organization starts to understand this before things get out of hand and people are going down the shadow IT space of using these open source technologies or these open technologies that are out there. And putting the wrong information into it, not understanding, the consequences. So that brings us a bit to designing for AI. So, what information architecture considerations are needed to support AI? We've talked about some of the risks and things like that, and some of those risks are internal risks, right? Making bad decisions, old content, inaccurate content, all that kind of stuff. So, we need to be thoughtful about how we design our internal solutions, as well as how we leverage that external technology. So we hear all the time, well, we thought we would upgrade from SharePoint 2013 to SharePoint 2016 and our problems would go away. Or, we thought if we just went from SharePoint 2016 to the cloud, right, all of our problems would go away. Well, we've all heard this before, and it really just does not work. Artificial intelligence is no different. It's not a magic wand. You can't, enable AI on your content and have all your problems fixed, right? So we often hope that new technology will fix our existing problems, but generally that doesn't happen. Instead, it just brings those problems into the next system or technology, right? Rather than fixing what is an issue in one system, you're now bringing those same issues to the next system. AI is no different. In fact, AI may actually enhance or expose some of those problems even further, right? So, you know, um, the problems themselves are routed in your business processes, your content management, your records management, your security structures, and the way that you're handling and developing your content over time. As we moved into, SharePoint Online and things like that, and we had, search, this was also this very similar concern, right? Oh, now that we have search, right? If I search for this, am I going to find the wrong content? Am I going to find old policies? Sometimes, right, it might be weighted so far where we're not looking at those old versions because, version 1 happened to come to the top because of how, the search ranks those results. Right, AI will weight your content as well to a degree, but it's more likely to expose some of that content, right? So as I'm generating a response, it's looking through all of our documents and things like that. Whereas search, right, maybe it was on the next page and we didn't need to, we never scrolled that far to find it because we just looked at the top one. It's also going to have a harder time identifying, things like, oh, well, I know that one's marked, Jane's version or Jane's comments are the final one because Jane's our CEO. But, AI doesn't necessarily know that. So putting, Jane's comments in the final version doesn't mean anything to the AI, right? So you need to be, thinking about, those problems that currently exist today and how you're going to address them before AI will give you kind of that most benefit and value. So, right, AI is not going to fix, poor content. It's not going to fix bad information architecture. So if your content is not well organized, not well tagged, if your security is not in place, right, it's not going to fix those things. It's not going to fix your rot. So redundant, obsolete, trivial content is still in your system. AI is not magically going to fix all that and get rid of it for you or know which one is your final version. Right? No single source of truth, multiple copies. It's going to be more confusing. You're going to get less benefits where it also may not know what the most recent version is. Maybe you have 3 kind of unique different versions and it's pulling information from all of that when really those should have been combined into one version, right? So any of these major issues that you tend to face with your data, AI doesn't just fix this, right? So don't expect it to do that. Just like search doesn't fix these things, right? It exposes them potentially further. It makes them a bigger issue for you. So really these fixes come from that strong foundation in SharePoint through your good information architecture, your strong security, content controls, lifecycle management, and metadata. So if you haven't done a proper digital transformation project to get into SharePoint Online, you may struggle if you start trying to implement AI today, especially generative AI. Right. So before we used to say here at Gravity Union that you need that solid SharePoint foundation based off of, records management in order to implement, records management, privacy, automation, integration. Now we would take that one farther and we would also add artificial intelligence to this, right? If you don't have that base in SharePoint, if you don't have all of those, foundational things around your content, so, no multiple versions, get rid of the redundant, trivial, obsolete content, all that kind of stuff, right? It's going to be a lot harder to then implement AI on top of this. So your content management is really core requirement for AI to provide the most benefit for you when you go to leverage it. Today, AI is not great at understanding sarcasm, humor, outdated content, that trivial content, right? So has less context than you as a human. Maybe you can identify things like obsolete policies or where somebody wrote, a sarcastic response in an email or things like that. But can AI identify that, or is it going to start generating, responses based off of that information that you don't actually want? So again, if you happen to be one of the organizations that maybe jumped to the cloud real quick because of COVID and you did just a lift and shift of your messy content, part of your strategy should be to clean up and build some proper structure around that information and that content before you start looking to layer on AI or records management or any of those other pieces into the platform. So you want to make sure that you're applying structure, metadata, which is going to set you up for all that future success, allow you then later on to start leveraging the AI technology to really help increase those business processes further. So no lift and shift, right? If you take this old messy content and you dump it into SharePoint Online, you're just going to have some old messy content in SharePoint Online. Instead, we want to take our messy content and turn it into nice, organized, beautiful, tagged content where not just humans, but AI can also find this content and use it appropriately. So we also want to make sure that we are securing our content, right? So security becomes ever more important as we're talking about AI, right? Things like hiding content from search, keeping it out of navigation, implementing security by obscurity, hoping, that most people just won't stumble upon this content because we've done our best to hide it. Might have worked then, but it's likely not going to work with this new AI tech, right? So if I ask, a Copilot or a Chat GPT that has access to my business content potentially, right? Find and summarize any documents regarding upcoming layoffs. If we've simply tried to hide that content, it's not actually secure, right? We're more likely to get a response that gives us all the detail and information. No different than search, right? If I put in search, but that generative AI just becomes easier for people to use than search for finding that content where they still need to weed through the results and different things like that. Gen AI is going to just expose that if they have access to that content. So making sure that you have proper security measures in place. And this could be things like sensitivity labels, data loss prevention, right? So you want to have those internal, access control models in place, but also potentially layering on additional security measures. Maybe you've been going down an open by design process, which can still be fine, right? But you better have some other controls in place that allow you to then, control this content, right? So maybe you want major versions, managing the life cycle of the content itself, applying sensitivity labels that maybe prevent certain people from accessing different content and things like that. Want to make sure that all those are in place as you go down this AI journey. There is this new product, SharePoint Advanced Management, called SAM, that Microsoft has come out with, right? So this does allow for further controls from IT and SharePoint administrators. You can actually do things like site access restrictions, whereas before it was more you just give people access or you don't. Now we can restrict access. We can do some more advanced reporting capabilities like sharing, change history logs, all that kind of stuff. We can have conditional access policies for specific sites, and we can have site lifecycle policies for inactive sites, prompts that ask people, hey, is this site still active? If not, maybe we do need to consider getting rid of that site, cleaning up that content, right? So that people aren't finding it and accessing it when it hasn't been active for the last couple of years. We also want to make sure that we are managing that content life cycle, right? So, would be terrible if you made a decision based on, that 1970 drug and alcohol policy, right? It's probably not relevant today. Likely things have changed since then. But if somebody is finding that or Gen AI is bringing that up, that could be a problem, right? So we want to make sure that we are appropriately dealing with the life cycle of our content and our policies and all that content, as it becomes obsolete or trivial or redundant and things like that. And we always want to do that automatically as much as possible, because we know our employees are not going to be good at going back, searching through SharePoint, getting rid of that old content, right? So we need to make sure that we have tooling in place that's going to do this for us, right? We can't expect them to end users to necessarily do that, but we do expect them to start using, these new AI technologies at some point. So implementing records management solution to dispose of content over time becomes critical as you go into that world of AI, right? So you can use Purview or a third-party tool in order to help you kind of implement that behind the scenes, automate that life cycle. It's not just great for AI, but it's also going to help you with all your other legal requirements and obligations. It's going to help you in legal hold or e-discovery scenarios, right? So there's not just AI benefits, but there's just benefits in general to making sure that you're implementing this. Sorry, clicked a little too fast. So archiving might also become important, right? So SharePoint, has afforded us the flexibility of in-place archiving in general, right? So we can do in-place records management and in-place archiving, meaning that it's just going to scroll away or be hidden from a view over time, right? So we're seeing the most recent content, or we're seeing our active content, and we're just hiding the rest of that content, right? Maybe not a great solution with AI for certain content anymore. So, again, are we just hiding those policies through views, through metadata? Is AI then pulling those old obsolete policies? So we need to be careful. Maybe you need a more robust archiving solution in order to move that older content, that obsolete content out of the SharePoint platform into a different platform. In some cases, you might be able to just remove permissions from a site and leave that site, right? If it's an old project, something that, an old process or function that's no longer done in the organization, maybe that's good enough until it lives out its life cycle. But in other situations, right, ongoing processes, you're going to need to move some of that content out, which can be useful because you can actually get cheaper storage and things like that. And Microsoft has announced their archiving tool as well that is coming. Of course, there's also lots of third-party tools out there that you can start to use as well. But as your data is growing, and most likely at our organization, it is growing quite rapidly. If you're not applying things like records management and archiving, whether you're using AI or not, you're going to start to buy, right, more storage. You're going to start to hit your capacity. You're going to start to buy more and more and more. And eventually that just becomes your standard, right? Even if you do get rid of that in the future, right, whatever your capacity is now, that's kind of what you're paying for. That's what's in your budget. You'll continue to pay for it. It becomes your default standard. So you want to get ahead of that as well. So really our successful designs in SharePoint, right, or for AI are also founded in a strong SharePoint foundation, right? It requires content management controls, security needs to be in place that's going to keep confidential information confidential and out of the eyes of Gen AI and employees that shouldn't have it. Should include records management, right? We need to make sure that we are disposing of older content appropriately in order to, get the most out of that Gen AI. And then it should likely include an archiving strategy and solution as well, because you do want to get rid of that content or get that content out of SharePoint or out of at least, the general access when it's no longer useful to the business, but maybe you need to keep this for longer. Okay, quickly, I know we're coming close on time here, so quickly we'll jump through some real quick examples. So, there is a lot of AI technology in Microsoft 365. So we do have intelligent document processing, content assembly, OCR, chatbots, Power Virtual Agents, Assistants, sorry, which is now actually called Copilot Studio. We have the Copilots that are all coming, and then there's Azure OpenAI and some other things as well. So I'm going to give a real quick demo of intelligent document processing, because not all AI requires Gen AI. You might not be ready for that. The cost might be too high to implement some of these Copilot things, but there are other pay-as-you-go services that we can do. So real quickly, I have a invoices solution here. And I have some old ones that I dropped in, but we can drop some new ones in. And it's going to start processing this. And really intelligent document processing is extracting that metadata for us. So all these new files that I've dropped in are starting to process, and we can see that. It will take a minute, but as I go over, we can also do things like apply records management on top of this. So if I'm looking at this model, I am applying a retention label. So if we want to layer on retention, it's nice and easy for us to do. So we can go ahead and layer that in as we process these documents and identify them. Hopefully that will process fairly quickly here, but I do have my examples from before. So as they start to process, it's going to start to extract this information for us. It will start to flag missed information the way I've got it set up, and it will apply that retention label for us. So this makes it really easy to start applying reporting or dealing with, problem ones, or, show me all the ones that meet a certain threshold where I need to take a quicker look at those, right? And if I refresh here, hopefully this will have started to go through. Yeah, and we can see, well, we did that. It's been extracted, all that information for us, right? So just making our lives easier, flagging things for us quickly. We need to validate and go through this information. So real quick, just jumping through the last couple bits of slides here. So we have a little bit of time for questions, hopefully. Right, so chatbots, we can go ahead and build chatbots, but now we can leverage Gen AI to make those more robust solutions, right? So now we can leverage other content, not just pre-seeded content. As we go through right into Copilots, there's a Copilot for everything. One of the really cool ones is SharePoint. So hey, create a page out of a document that already exists. So if you're going to convert documents to pages instead, this can save you tons and tons of time and create great pages for you. There are copilots in Power Automate as well, right? So you can do things like send an email of items due in 30 days, which isn't a great prompt. A better prompt, send an Outlook email with an HTML table of data from a SharePoint list that is filtered by a due date of 30 days, right? So creating better prompts, again, training your employees to kind of go through that and get the most out of it. And you get a much simpler workflow this way. And even better is being even more specific. What is your trigger? What are your actions, right? So when an item is created rather than recurrence that it gave me. So, specify the trigger, workflow prompts, include names, actions, all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, you can't ignore artificial intelligence. So you want to build that into your strategy. Business strategy, tech strategy, organization culture, RM strategy, transformation projects. AI is not a replacement for the proper SharePoint design, IA, security, and records management. So make sure you have those in place. And then AI should not be treated as a replacement for people, but as a foundational tool to enhance their productivity and efficiency. So train, educate, and encourage your staff to use AI responsibly and ethically within your organization. Okay.
All right.
Question.
Thank you, Jeff. That was great. Very informative. We're just putting up our emails on the slide here. So you can send us questions here as well, and we'll make sure to get back to you. You can email Jeff directly or email us, and we'll get back to you. So I am going to wrap it up here. I want to make sure everyone has time to get to their next thing. So thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate your time. And let us know if you have any questions or feedback. Thanks all.